let us take a few moments in the quiet. We have taken in so many sounds and so much with our children. We have so much of which to be thankful and so much which is no doubt on our hearts related to what's going on in our country and our world. So I just invite you in these few moments before I would begin speaking again to be in touch with the Spirit that is speaking to you this morning. We're going to have an opportunity at the end of my sharing to be thinking about the senses, the ways in which we hear and we see and we taste and we feel and we smell the presence of the Spirit in our midst. Sometimes it is indeed so evident before us, and sometimes it takes some pausing to imagine what it was in that early time of the early church, and to imagine ourselves on the forefront of change and a revolutionary spirit, which both we stand in awe of and in trepidation. Because truthfully, friends, we don't know exactly how the Spirit will call us, and we know that there's something risky and dangerous calling out from Jesus's ministry and love. A love that dares to go to the margins, a love that dares to be with the one who would be cast out, a daring, oh God, we know, to be alongside those who are sick and imprisoned and maligned. And so let us find our space in our spirits this morning and ask how it is that we can be most present to the Spirit in this place. Let us take about a minute in that quiet and receive the words or the simple stillness that the Spirit would offer us this morning. Let us be in that posture of quiet. Amen. When we are most quiet, then we can hear the unsuspecting sounds. I heard the little click of the oven that is currently still heating the bread that we're about to enjoy. I received the smell of the bread as it's wafting through this place. Dough that Carol Dunleavy had originally formed in her very own kitchen, that we might be fed. I imagine that in order to have the energy of that moment at Pentecost, that there were such moments of silence. Silent as the tomb as necessary. Silent as the butterfly that is waiting to become. Silence in this space where we continue to question how it is that the Spirit will lead us in love. I like that in the text, it doesn't say what words were being said and communicated. It's just that they were understood. They were in many languages, but we don't have the exact phrases that were being emitted from people's lips. That's why I wanted us to live into that liberating moment this morning with the words that were coming to us, what we would dare to shout out about what the Spirit is doing in our midst. Sometimes we can be surprised, and we know that the tradition of speaking in tongues, of which many churches, many Pentecostal churches especially, find that they give themselves over to the Spirit, sometimes so much, and maybe you've been present in terms of the times in which someone falls out and they are prostrate because they have been so filled with the Spirit. Sometimes there's got to be somebody to catch them, right? Because if you fall out, you don't want to bonk your head. I've seen such holy times and witness of that. I've heard people speaking in tongues, and then I've heard times in which In the still and the quiet that follows, there's an opportunity for the community to imagine and to understand and to interpret together. Perhaps there's someone particularly gifted. We know that this was a gifting through the New Testament, to help discern what it was that the Spirit was doing in those moments, and also what the Spirit would be calling that person, the community, to do going forward. Now, this is a little bit divorced from many of our traditions, whether it's Catholic or Protestant or some of the other places that you are. Sometimes places around the globe have a lot more freedom in this way of living with expression into the body, into dancing, into speaking into tongues. We acknowledge in the space of our own humility, with a religion that is beyond the walls, that God has many, many expressions. And so we don't want to limit the expression of God, especially when we're choosing to gather here in this space and when we gather out in other spaces of which we are being called in this moment. Now, I was hearing from my mom, who likes to stand on a corner in Memphis once a week or so, and she finds that it's about the same amount of people that continue to gather, and some of them look the same. Sometimes it's new people coming in. She says it's people of a certain generation. Do you know what that means? That people that look like her in her 70s, maybe the people that were already knowing what it was to hold signs, maybe people that can go off in the middle of the day because they're not working to hold a sign. But she says, you know what's miraculous is we stand on that corner, and in this day and time, we all have something very different on our signs. That there's no shortage of things of which to call forth, that a phrase or word that's coming to you in a moment that's got you in a space of having some understandable righteous anger. And so think about the time that it takes to write those phrases on a poster, to get in your car, to drive to a corner, and to stand next to people who have posters that say different things. Now, it might not even be addressing the exact same cause, but there's this overall tenor of a liberating force of change and reform that's happening, where people are gathering, and whether or not the exact same message or the thing is on their sign, there's something of a solidarity that's happening. Maybe it's like you're looking in the eyes, or you're looking for certain signs of openness. Perhaps if you are wondering if you're going to be accepted, you're looking for a rainbow or some evidence that people are in a posture of humility and knowing that this is a hard time in which to express yourself as a trans or gay person in this world when you hear so much hurt. But you're looking into the face of others, and it's important to gather where you are. And in that space of solidarity, you say, well, this is my message today. This is what my urgent heart is calling out. And someone over here is saying, like, well, this is my urgent message that is being called out. We're in a Pentecost moment, friends. There's no lack of urgent messages that are being called out, that need to be called out and proclaimed. But it's hard when we say unity, unity, unity. What does unity look like when we value everybody and what they're bringing? Did you see on the song that we were singing that God is going to help make a way for the just and the unjust? Does that get a lump in our throats? That even those, if we're holding this deep sign and we feel like someone is fundamentally against us, that there's still going to be the wide arc of God's love that might make a way for someone who vehemently agrees with you or vehemently disagrees with you. We might remember the words of James Baldwin, though, that say, you can have your right to opinion, but not if it denigrates who I am fundamentally as a person. That was a paraphrase, not a quote. How do we hold these things in tension, making a way for those who disagree and standing up alongside those who should be having more voice? I want to share 2 slides with you because I think it's important on Pride Weekend, that sometimes if we're outside looking in or haven't been participating in a particular parade, that we can make judgments about what we see and say, I don't get this celebration. I don't get what Pride is. And I wanted to put up these 2 slides. The first one, this is the work of Jess Bird. She's a self-taught artist and illustrator. She works out of Rochester, New York, and her pieces have been featured in many, many places. But she is definitely on the forefront of pride and mental health awareness. And she's partnered with different people to get this word out. She says she started her work both literally and figuratively in the closet. I think because she works in New York, probably didn't have much space. And has grown as an artist and human alongside many who've supported her. She came out as queer in 2017 and has received a late diagnosis of ADHD when she was 31 years old. Jess's art reflects her inclusive values, and she is a vocal advocate for queer and trans rights, belonging, mental health, and anti-racist action. She lives with her family in Rochester. But I want to show this to you because maybe you've heard this, maybe you felt this way initially as you're becoming into a more place of education. You think, what is all this pride? Right? We've got rainbows and parades. That's what it's about. Once a year, we put out a rainbow, and that's what it's about. I was seeing some comments on Facebook about the flags that were up in Old Ellicott City, and there was some unkind comments there about what those flags mean. Right? To have one kind of binary view of it's good or it's bad. It's what represents me or it doesn't. It's sexual or it's not sexual, right? I was hearing all kinds of comments. Don't read the comment section if you're not brave. Feeling brave anyway. Maybe you're not always feeling brave. I want to show the second slide because this is the one that's paired with this first one. And it's looking at all these messages that we urgently hold in our hearts, especially those who would be identifying as LGBTQIA+ at a pride space, right? What pride actually is. I'm going to walk through this because I don't expect our eyes all to be able to read, either on the bulletin or otherwise. Validating intersections. Feeling at home in yourself. Honoring those who paved the way, especially Black trans elders. Fighting for equal rights. Protecting trans youth. Gender euphoria. Being accepted and respected as ourselves. Still rainbows. Surviving hard stuff. Loving yourself more than needing to be loved by others. Feeling free. Having community. Boring everyday life is your authentic self. That's a section of it, right? Right. Being valid in the closet to stay safe, because some people need that tremendously. Yeah. Celebration and queer sex. What does it take when we take a moment to think about the fluidity and the fullness of things and all that everyone's bringing? Not to assume that anyone's bringing any just one thing to the table, especially at something like Pride. And that's why the rainbow itself and all of its multi-splendid glory is refusing to be flattened or stamped out. It's showing the texture and the wideness of God's love. And it's an echoing of a love that we know that was present in the Bible at a time in which we thought all would be darkness, in which God in a promise says, no more. I will be about the lifting up of people, and I put a rainbow in the sky as a symbol of that covenant. Friends, I give thanks for those who, like Jess Bird, are helping us to stay wide awake and alive and open, knowing that there will always be those, as there was at the first Pentecost, making judgments from the sidelines. The part right after we read was those who were jeering and looking at them and saying, you are filled with new wine being cheap wine, and you're speaking nonsense in that passage. And the persistence that happens when Peter, who I believe is called in that moment to be an interpreter of tongues and an interpreter of that moment, who turns and he describes the ministry and life of Jesus again for them, some hearing it for the very first time, wondering how they're going to be empowered in love because they will be called to do hard things. Here in this moment, as they're gathered in the synergy of that space, all these people from all over will then be called out unto the world, back into the spaces and perhaps to new places of which they will proclaim the multifaceted reality of what it means to have pride in oneself as a beloved, godly creation. And to speak on behalf and alongside and with and in allyship with those who express it differently than you do. And to remember Jesus, who, when they tried to silence him, that there was a way that was made out of no way. There was waves of people that refused to be quiet.